Hi, everyone. So I think, have enough attendees as well now. Hira, if you could kindly begin the program. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mavra. Assalamu alaikum, and hello, everyone. Thanks, thanks for joining us. My name is Hira Mumtaz, and I work within Energy and Climate. I'm associated with Private Financing Advisory Network as known as also known as PFAN, as an investment advisor as well as interim lead of the community of practice. And I'm very pleased to bring to you today's webinar on a very special topic. A little bit of background about what we do. This webinar is being brought to you by the Clean Energy Financing Pakistan Task Force in partnership with Women in Energy under the USAID funded Pakistan Private Sector Energy Project hosted by UNIDO and PFAN. The task force is a community of practice consisting of 50 or so financial institutions, be it commercial banks, DFIs, guarantee firms, etc. We typically plan and host periodic events for our task force members to enhance capacity building and knowledge sharing amongst our members within the larger realm of clean energy financing. This month, however, we decided to do a public webinar open for all in honor of the March Gender Equality Month, as well as to celebrate the contributions made by women within the clean energy transition and sustainability space, which is going to be the broader theme of today's session. As we all know, women have significant representation in each of the sub themes of clean energy, be it the path away from fossil fuels, energy efficiency, electric vehicles, or financing for greening the transition. We structured today's event to reflect these sub-themes, and we have a stellar lineup today of female members in each of these sub-themes that are all paving the way for greater equity in their respective fields. Without further ado, I'd now like to hand over to Mavra Bari, who will be moderating the event today. Thanks again, everyone, for being here, especially to our speakers, and over to you, Mavra.
Thank you so much, Hira, for introducing us a little bit to PPSE and what the Clean Energy Financing Task Force does. We're very happy that we are open the floor publicly for this particular webinar. So I am Mavra Bari. I am the communications expert as well as a gender focal point for the Pakistan Private Sector Clean Energy Sector Energy Project. And it is my honor to introduce all of our impressive speakers today and carry out the moderation. If just some housekeeping rules before we begin, if anyone from the audience has any questions, please do input them in the Q&A function. And inshallah, if time permits, we will take some audience questions right at the end. But please note that the webinar is being recorded for our internal records. So now let's proceed with the agenda. I would first like to introduce to you all our opening speaker, Mr. Stephen Berlinget. He is the Deputy Director of Economic Growth and Sustainability at USAID Pakistan. He has 20 years of experience managing business affairs and government policy in emerging markets and developing countries, including 9 years in ASEAN region.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I am delighted to be here. Assalamu alaikum, and a very good day to all of you. And I may add Ramadan Kareem. So let me begin by thanking everyone here today for your participation. The timing is great. It is Women's History Month. It's Gender Equality Month. So many things are happening. And for me, here and now, it's a privilege to speak among so many women panelists who they have made their way in a very male-dominated sector. So I applaud everyone that's here on the panels today. My message today is going to be pretty simple, and I'm here to ask us all to think about how we can make a stronger case for more women in the energy sector. Now, increasing women's participation in energy as well as all STEM fields makes sense on its own merits. I would like to see women's representation in all sectors reach parity with that of men. And this, again, this is for its own sake, because personally, I want to live in a world with equal opportunity for all. But there's another good reason why we need to see better representation in the energy sector. It's because it's good for business. It's good for companies. It's good for consumers. And I would argue that better women's representation in this sector is good for the environment. So renewable energy jobs are the jobs of the future. This is a sector that is expanding rapidly everywhere, and Pakistan included. There's a lot of momentum around renewable energy right now, and there's going to be that momentum for a very long time. So now is a good time for us to be focusing on building gender diversity in what is a fast growing sector. So here's what we know from the research, and all of these conclusions apply to the renewable energy sector. Companies with women on their boards of directors, these companies simply do better than companies without women's representation on their boards. We see that returns on investment improve when there's more women's leadership in the company. Sales improve, equity improves, customer satisfaction improves. And I think that products and services themselves improve. When you have more diversity in product and service design, you can reach a broader customer base. All of these things make for better operations, and they make for a better customer experience. Energy companies with women in decision-making positions they're also more likely to take different kinds of risks as well. So USAID worked with a company in Nicaragua that fit this description. There was profound women's representation in this company. They made major investments in rural renewable energy systems. The result here was major quality of life improvements in the countryside that enabled more women in these areas, that freed up these women to join the formal labor force, which had a knock-on effect of contributing to the rural and national economy. So women's participation is good for the renewable energy sector. It's good for individual companies. It's good for consumers. But women's participation in leadership and decision-making positions is also good for our climate. We know that energy companies with women in decision-making positions are more likely to invest in renewables. They are more likely to invest in improving energy efficiency, and they are more likely to save costs in other ways. So many reasons women's participation in this sector makes sense for all of us, and beyond women's participation on merits. It's good for the sector in so many ways. The USAID is committed to women's empowerment, and it views gender mainstreaming as an integral and critical part of all of our programming. So just this week, USAID launched its updated gender equality and women's empowerment policy. And this policy is going to guide us in all of our work, but it's going to guide us as we advance structural changes that address the root causes of gender inequality and promote more equitable outcomes. We've been at this for a while. So USAID has done a number of things in Pakistan. We have provided scholarships, training, and internship opportunities to STEM graduates. We've encouraged young women through all of these means to pursue energy and STEM careers. And we've made supporting women-led businesses a focal point in our economic growth programming. And I haven't even touched the work that we're doing in health and education. PPSE is one of the projects that supports clean energy businesses, and gender mainstreaming is one of its core focal points to help women Women operated and managed clean energy businesses and startups through access to finance, coaching, and mentoring. To achieve gender equity in the energy sector, that would mean achieving what we call the 3 E's: equal opportunity, equal pay, and equal leadership. But meeting this equity goal also requires a strong commitment from all stakeholders, from everyone here, to implement actions that accelerate women's participation in the renewable energy sector. That's why we're all here today. So I am very happy to be here again. I'm really looking forward to hearing what people have to say about this important topic. I'm happy to hear from all the speakers who are really the role models in the sector. They are trailblazers. And I want to better understand how I can become and how my organization can become a better change agent for gender equity, for more diversity, and for broader participation of women in the sector that we all care so much about, renewable energy sector. So I'm looking forward to learning today. And I want to thank PPSE and all the organizers for what is a very important and timely discussion. Again, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen, for those words of support and encouragement to our project and today's program, especially. Now, I would like to invite my colleague to succinctly brief you all about our project and how it aligns with clean energy transition, especially from a gender perspective. Amar Yasser is the PPSE Chief of Party and is a licensed professional engineer working in the areas of clean energy, energy efficiency, and industrial productivity since 2007. Over to you, Amar.
Thank you. Thank you, Mavra. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone, for joining. The irony is that we are starting embracing equity with 2 male speakers. The Private Financing Advisory Network is a global network of climate and clean energy financing experts, which offer business coaching and investment facilitation to entrepreneurs developing clean and climate energy projects in the emerging markets. A proposition that we bring in on the table is that on one side, there is a limited supply of investment-ready project in the domain of climate and clean energy. And on the other side, there is an issue of lack of investment in these domains. The limited supply of project is because of the fact that project developers lack the financial and commercial skills and have unrealistic expectations, whereas the lack of investment flow is because of the reason that the investors have low familiarity with technologies and business model when we talk about climate and clean energy related investments. And what PFAN do is try to bridge this gap. How we do that? There are certain services that we provide to projects and businesses. We assess their investment potential. We work with them to develop and elaborate and optimize their business model and financial structure. We assist them in preparation of whatever documents that are required to have the transaction investment ready, whether it is their business plan, feasibility study, technical study, financial model, etc. We then identify potential investors, make introductions via roadshows, one-on-one introduction, and in the end, we help the businesses to achieve the structure and negotiation so that they can achieve the financial goals. PFAN is around the world since 2007. Globally, it has been able to raise more than $300 billion in the area of clean energy and climate finance for 230 projects that it has supported. Now, let's talk about Pakistan. I believe most of the participants know that Pakistan require $200 billion in this decade to meet its NDC commitments, which require investments in the area of clean energy, investments in the area of climate adaptation. These investments, so what PFAN is trying to do is, PFAN is trying to develop a pipeline of the projects in which this investment can flow in. We have a pipeline of 42 projects in the area of solar, clean transport, biomass, recycling, energy access, and our overall pipeline size is more than $400 million. As Stephen has already mentioned, PFAN recognize gender not just as responsibility, but opportunity. It makes financial economic sense to have a more diverse team leaders in terms of clean energy projects. We believe that sustainability is not possible without inclusivity. As a result, more than 30% of our advisors are female. In our pipeline, 12% is the ratio of female ownership of the business that we are coaching. 23% is the female representation in the executive management of the company that we are supporting. We constantly try to gender sensitize our team, whether it is advisor or entrepreneurs, and we want to improve this baseline going forward. In this year, we are doing multiple activities in this regard, and we inshallah, going forward, will continue to engage with the people in this session going forward in this regard. With this, I would like to thank everyone for sparing their time attending this session, particularly the panelists, and looking forward to have a very healthy discussion going forward. Thank you, Mawra.
Thank you so much, Amar. And without further ado, I would like to jump into our topics of discussion today. The first of which is weaving equity in sustainable industries. And I'd like to invite the first speaker for this session, which is Mehwish Villani, COO of Al-Karam. Mehwish has 2 decades of investment banking experience with a focus on project finance and debt capital markets. Her body of work includes spearheading the 2002 IPP's project financing wave of renewable energy projects. So Mehwish, I just wanted to lead with a question particularly for you. So how is the textile industry and other sustainability conscious industries adopting more equitable policies to include more women in its production floors, supply chain management, and decision-making positions?
Thank you so much, BFAN, for inviting me to this forum. It's so ironic that for the bulk of my career, when I was indeed working on renewable energy, and there's quite a bit that I would love to sort of also share from those experiences. But the day I am actually on a forum like this, I am on the other side of the table, where it's actually the usage of such means of energy is being debated. Let me just begin with sharing a few stats with you. Just to give you a perspective where retail sector today stands in terms of Pakistan's economy, it's the 3rd largest contributor to the economy with a lion's share of 18% of GDP, about 75 billion US. And out of that, retail apparel or retail fashion, as in the industry that I am now representing today, constitutes about 8 to 9%. That's a pretty sizable chunk. And what we produce is mostly for women. Somewhere I read a very interesting article that an industry that sells to the women should naturally have women working for it, because your consumer is a woman. She's making most of the decisions regarding your product. So the minds that have to design the product right from the get-go, from the design, where that's where our product starts its conceptualization, right to the point where it's being sold. So lots of functions come in between. And interestingly, completely contrary to the industry that I have worked for a big chunk of my life, this industry, interestingly, has a very healthy representation of women. About 4 out of my 12 direct reports are women. And that includes the head of design, that includes the head of e-commerce, that includes marketing and creative. So very significant functions. And even within supply chain, I have women in very powerful decision-making positions. And again, then if you include me, then that makes the chunk even bigger. So I think that's something we have very consciously decided to have a very inclusive participation of women at the leadership level, peeling down the layers all the way down to the workers, because we have all kinds of workers, right? We have a supply chain that has a lot of labor force, and then we have a sales force, which is a sizable chunk, again, a huge labor force out there. I would say, and I would like to hope that one day even I can boast the same stat for my sales force, but for the rest of my head office workforce, as well as my supply chain workforce, I can very proudly tell you that about 30% workforce is women. And that's something we would one day like to proudly share the same stat for our retail sales workforce also. Now, again, that's not good enough, because women are 50% of your overall population, and their economic representation should also be similar. So the steps for us are out there to have as much gender inclusion, and also create an environment within our workspace, Al Karam Studio. And it's very heartening to see, and that this is something, the ownership comes right from the sponsors, from the board. There's a lot of support in terms of creating a very inclusive work environment for mothers also. Most of my heads are moms, working mothers, including myself. So, to create those kind of working environment for parents, mothers, fathers, both, to be able to come to work and also raise children and be good parents, and also feel safe in a work environment. So all those are very important part of our workspace ethos. One important thing that I would like to share is the role of energy, the role that power prices have played in a sector like ours. So retail is not a rent-seeking sector, unlike many other sectors that I have serviced as a banker or as an investment banker. It's an open competition and a fiercely competitive market with a very little product differentiation. And here, the power cost is something that bleeds our already shrinking operating margins. And for a company like us, for a sector like us, having renewable energy makes so much sense. It is not only, again, serving the entire global community towards becoming more a cleaner corporate representative, but it also is a win-win for us, right? It's in the last 8-10 months since I've been with this company, our power costs have gone up by almost 100%. And, that's probably the sole contributor to my company's shrinking operating margins. And just for a moment, if I replace the grid with with renewable energy, or, a dedicated renewable energy source, I can already see this could make a world of difference to our cost base. And again, passing the same thing on to our consumers as well. So it makes a very natural sense for somebody coming from a company coming from our sector to, embrace clean energy and renewable energy. However, just a roadblock that I would like to point out, and that's a roadblock I think even the financial sector now continues to experience, is the access to the financing to set up such projects now within companies like us. All those accesses, unfortunately, right now have been halted for the time being. So here comes in a very important role that, PFAN, I know you guys are right now in the advisory role, but again, to sort of orchestrate that kind of financing support for such clean energy initiatives to be set up for our kind of companies. We have about 62 stores all throughout Pakistan and a huge head office here. But what we don't have is access to financing that would enable us to set up things like that. And I do know that there have been so many distributed solar companies now who are struggling access to such financing. So do we have any alternatives? Does State Bank always need to come to our rescue? these are the questions I would like to leave you guys with. Again, I'm not on the financing side anymore. So now I look towards the financial sector to come back with some interesting solutions for us.
Those are really interesting points, Mavish. Thank you so much for that. And in that, actually, it's very interesting you spoke about energy efficiency, because our next speaker is actually doing quite lots of interesting things in that space. So I would like to actually continue this conversation with Mehdia Naqvi, who is working at Ibrahim Textile Mills as the energy team lead. And throughout the project, she has implemented various projects, including solar panel installation, condensing boiler, and installation of new efficient engines. So Mehdia, I would kindly like to ask you some follow-up questions. So could you please comment on, like, you're leading, these energy efficiency, initiatives. And so what kind of changes do you think are needed at the upper management levels to reduce emissions and to make business more sustainable and equitable? And as what Mavish was saying, what can be done together by different companies in this sector?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, thanks all of you to inviting me on this platform. और especially thanks to all सारे हजरात और ख़वातीन जो मिलकर उन ख़वातीन या उन वुमेन्स के लिए काम कर रहे हैं, उनके कामों को एक्नॉलेज कराने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, उनके लिए कोशिशें कर रहे हैं. So thank you first of all. Let me start with a brief introduction. My name is Sayyida Mehdia Naqvi and I'm working as an energy manager in Ibrahim Textile Mills industry. और अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह इस साल हमारी सबसे बिगेस्ट अचीवमेंट ये रही है कि इब्राहिम टेक्सटाइल मिल्स को अवार्ड किया गया यूनिटो की तरफ से बीइंग अ बेस्ट एनर्जी परफॉर्मर इन टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर, एंड आई हैव आल्सो अवार्डेड एज बेस्ट वुमेन इन एनर्जी सेक्टर as well, which was the biggest achievement, one of the biggest achievement I think. So I want to highlight कि ये अचीवमेंट बेसिकली इसलिए भी और बिगर या बिगेस्ट बन गई कि एक मेल डोमिनेंट सेक्टर, एक टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर में अचीव की गई, जहाँ पर टेक्निकल साइड लें या नॉन टेक्निकल साइड लें, वहाँ पे फीमेल्स के काम करते हुए देखना, लीडरशिप को देखना एक शादो नादिर या बहुत जो है वो कम देखा जाता है. So this achievement or this kind of achievement for everyone can prove that women in any sector can perform beyond the boundaries. वो किसी भी डोमेन में हो, और अगर विलिंगनेस हो, अपॉर्चुनिटी हो, तो वो बिल्कुल इसके बाउंड्री से हट कर और आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स जाकर जो है वो अपने आप को प्रूव कर सकते हैं. सो ऑब्वियसली दिस कैन नॉट बी डन बाय एनी मैजिक. ये बहुत अचानक से नहीं हुआ, इसके पीछे बहुत से फेलियर, सक्सेस, कंसिस्टेंसी, परसिस्टेंसी और बेसिकली विलिंगनेस टू वर्क और विलिंगनेस टू चेंज था, जिसके बाद हमने ये जो है वो अचीवमेंट ली. और अगर मैं 5 साल पहले की बात करूं, जहां मुझे एज ए एनर्जी इंजीनियर हायर किया गया था, तो मेरे पास जो इस वक्त जो एक काम जो मैं समझती थी, जो मुझे दिया गया था, दैट इज कि एनर्जी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम की इम्प्लीमेंटेशन या एस्टैब्लिशमेंट थी, जो बाहिर एक डोमेन नजर आती थी कि आपने एनर्जी सेक्टर में काम करना है. बट गिविंग इट अ स्मॉल एग्जांपल, फीमेल्स भी हैं, मैन भी हैं, यहाँ पे सभी इस चीज को समझेंगे कि अगर आप किचन में एक खाना भी बनाते हैं तो वो एक खाना बनाने पे मुहित नहीं होता, वहाँ लिमिटेड नहीं हो जाता आपका काम. आपको चीज़ों की सिलेक्शन, व्हाट टू डू, व्हाट टू ब्रिंग और व्हाट टू कुक, ये सब कुछ आपको प्लानिंग करनी पड़ती है. तो जब ईएनएमएस के एस्टैब्लिशमेंट का वक्त आया तो मेरे साथ भी कुछ इसी तरह से था कि मेरा काम सिर्फ ईएनएमएस तक जो है वो लिमिटेड नहीं था. मुझे प्रोक्योरमेंट डिपार्टमेंट में काम करना था, मुझे कंप्लायंस डिपार्टमेंट, एचआर, मैकेनिकल, इलेक्ट्रिकल, यूटिलिटीज, इन शॉर्ट वो तमाम डोमेन जो एनर्जी परफॉर्मेंस पे जो है वो इम्पैक्ट डाल रहे थे, मुझे उन सबको एक तरीके से लीड करना था. तो बेसिकली हम कर क्या रहे थे, हम ये कर रहे थे कि तमाम एग्जिस्टिंग डिपार्टमेंट को अपने एनर्जी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम के साथ इंटीग्रेट कर रहे थे और तमाम पुराने लोगों को, उनके एक्सपीरियंसेस को, उनके हमारी एनर्जी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम की अप्रोच में ढालने की कोशिश कर रहे थे. बेसिकली दैट मीन कि उस वक्त मुझे जो मैं आपका आंसर जो मैंने तमीद बांधी आपके आंसर के लिए, मुझे जो एक प्लेटफॉर्म रिक्वायर्ड था वो ये था कि मेरी टॉप मैनेजमेंट, ठीक है, मेरी हायर मैनेजमेंट और बेसिकली मेरी टेक्निकल मैनेजमेंट मुझे वो तमाम प्लेटफॉर्म अवेल करे, वो तमाम अपॉर्चुनिटीज दे, ठीक है, और तमाम इख्तियारात दे कि जिन पे मैं अपने आइडियाज को जो है वो इम्प्लीमेंट करा सकूं. सो आई वुड लाइक टू थैंक्स मेरे CEO महमूद अहमद साहब और मेरे जनरल मैनेजर टेक्निकल इंजीनियरिंग अकील मोहसिन साहब. उन्होंने चेंज को बहुत खुले दिल के साथ एक्सेप्ट किया, और ना सिर्फ एक्सेप्ट किया बल्कि इस चीज को एक्सेप्ट करवाया. तो बेसिकली इस सारे चीज में मैंने पर्सनली अगर मैं बोलूँ तो मुझे खुद भी बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस थे। सबसे पहले तो पहला चैलेंज जो हमारे पर्सनल फियर होते हैं कि एक मेल डोमिनेंट सेक्टर में मैं काम करने जा रही थी, जहाँ पे मुझे एक न्यू एम्प्लॉय होने की हैसियत से हमेशा क्रिटिसिज्म का शिकार निशाना बनाया जाता था कि ऑब्वियसली मैं पुराने लोगों की तरह इनका एक्सपीरियंस नहीं रखती थी, या फिर मुझे जो है वो कल्चर चेंज करने पे एक रेजिस्टेंस मिलती थी, या एक कम्युनिकेशन गैप था। और इसके अलावा जो सबसे मेन चीज थी वो वुमेन लीडरशिप की एक्सेप्टेंस नहीं थी। ठीक है, तो ये सारे चैलेंजेस मुझे फेस करने थे और इन चैलेंजेस को ओवरकम भी करना था। तो
So
आपका
maybe
सवाल, यस, आपका सवाल कि किस तरह जो है वो टॉप मैनेजमेंट को चेंज करना चाहिए ताकि चीजें मतलब एनर्जी एफिशिएंट, सस्टेनेबिलिटी और वुमेन इक्विटी, इन तीनों चीजों को मद्देनजर रखते हुए, मैं कहना चाहूंगी मैं लकी थी, या फिर यही कहना चाहूंगी कि मैं लकी थी, इसलिए मुझे एक प्लेटफॉर्म मिला कि
जी,
मेरे टॉप मैनेजमेंट, मेरी टेक्निकल मैन, मैं बार बार कहूंगी टॉप मैनेजमेंट इज नॉट द ओनली डोमेन। आपकी टेक्निकल मैनेजमेंट भी, आपकी जो है वो दूसरे जो डिपार्टमेंट जो है वो आप पे आपकी एनर्जी परफॉर्मेंसेस पे असर रखते हैं, उन सबकी तरफ से इंकरेजमेंट मिलना एक जरूरी था, उनकी सबकी तरफ से एक चेंज मिलना जरूरी था। सो यस, दे गिव मी द अपॉर्चुनिटी। उन्होंने मेरे लिए क्या क्या इकदाम किए वो सिंपल अगर कुछ अल्फाजों में बताना चाहूँ कि उन्होंने सबसे पहले तो मुझे वक्त दिया कि मैं अपने आप को प्रूव कर सकूँ, मुझे ट्रस्ट किया, मेरे आइडियाज को सपोर्ट किया, मेरी टीम को सपोर्ट किया, फिर मुझे टीम बना कर दी, और उसके अलावा मेरे आइडियाज को इम्प्लीमेंट भी किया। उसके अलावा जिन स्किल्स में हम पीछे रह रहे थे, ऑब्वियसली हर कोई, मैं बीइंग इलेक्ट्रॉनिक इंजीनियर, एनर्जी में इस तरह से मेरी स्किल्स डेवलप नहीं थी, तो उन्होंने मेरी स्किल्स डेवलपमेंट पे भी काम किया। उन्होंने मुझे ऐसी सर्टिफिकेशंस कराई कि मैं अब एक एनर्जी के प्लेटफॉर्म पे बैठ के आई एम एबल टू स्पीक, आई एम एबल टू लीड।
So that's congratulations, Medya.
Yeah.
That's really heartening to hear. And I think, as you said, top management has to make that space for, women who are starting out and give them those trainings. That is an equitable measure, actually. So I'd like to move actually to someone who is for quite some time. Thank you so much, Medya. I'd like to
Thank you
now
so much.
move on to Dr. Fatma Kushnood, who actually for quite some time now has been in some top management positions. So I'd like to get your perspective as well on what are the opportunities and challenges in the power sector for more women to enter more managerial and top decision-making roles, such as yourself. Just let me quickly introduce Dr. Fatma Kushnood as well, who is the COO of Pact Capital. Fatma has a diverse experience in corporate finance, power sector advisory, infrastructure, finance, advisory, consulting, academics, research, and training. She's a privatization specialist, and she holds a PhD in corporate finance from the University of Western Australia. So Fatma, great to have you with us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mavra, and it's a very good afternoon to all of you. And it's always a pleasure to be part of PFAN and USA discussions. I always feel as I'm already a very integral part of this. So thank you for having me. I think before even starting off with the question that you've asked, I think it's very important to understand that as much as we have a lot of discussion on the strategies for which need to be in place to change this, especially in terms of having more women empowerment. I strongly feel that we are lacking on the implementation side. Our issue at the moment is implementation. If you look around, we almost very frequently have such sessions, which is a very good thing because identifying the problem is only acknowledging uh, that the problem exists. So thank God that we've actually reached that part. But I still feel that there's a lot to be done on the implementation side, where there's real action, which is for some odd reason missing from the equation. Even if now, if I look from a top management perspective, where I've been serving for quite some time now, subconsciously we tend to compartmentalize women. We would either hire them in marketing, HR, or admin roles already. We have this preset bias in our mind that these are the only fields where they can actually perform, and somehow, even if we don't admit this, but when it comes to scaling up these women to higher management or top management roles, we always have a bias which kicks in for one reason or the other. I'm not saying that that's something which is only at the part of the other gender that we are working with, but that the fault also lies somewhere within us. I think we as women sometimes fall short in terms of displaying our empowerment and in terms of displaying our equal opportunity employer in our organizations. We tend to have some sort of bias in terms of availing some sort of special, I would say, uh, 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 concessions, or I would say some sort of special treatment. But at the same time, we also want to be treated at par when it comes to the top management positions. I think that is something that we need to change for our gender. So I thought it's best to start with a criticism on our own selves, which I've seen over the years. Then I think another very important part is for such discussions, it's very important that we do include men equally in such discussions, because without making them part of this entire process, implementation will always be a challenge. So it's very important for them to be part of it. And in terms of the opportunities and challenges, I think what I feel is that when we talk about women, it's they are not groomed. Like very rightly pointed out by my previous panelist, fellow panelist, she did say that she was lucky that she had a very supportive CEO, but that's not generally the case. And there are a lot of roadblocks that you have to face. We need to actually work with these top managements to inculcate the mentorship programs and to make women leadership ready. You can't just expect one fine morning that they'll be at par when you're not really giving them that equal opportunities to outshine, to work, and even to groom. So I think, yes, it's very important, one, to have these women leadership ready, and that can be done by having a proper mentorship programs in place in all these organizations. Also, I think we need to stop creating quotas for women. They need to be start treated at par. You make an extra effort in grooming them, but when it comes to making a choice, they should absolutely be given no extra benefit for the fact of their gender. Rather, they should be competing purely on the merits and on their competencies only. I think another thing which is very important, which I would like to highlight, is that when we talk about these organizations, so much so that they are big organizations, I would not like to take any names here. They are very, they are actually the flag bearers of diversity and inclusion. They are actually the ones which are showcasing, but deep down, when you actually work with them in terms of your peers and in terms of your top management, sensitization always remain an issue. I think that is where we have to work. So as much as you have to do these leadership and mentorship programs for the women, you need to make these top management men also ready to accept women leadership, because that's where we falter. And unless you give them an equal opportunity to perform, an equal conducive environment, they will always be they will always struggle to reach that level. As for the opportunities and challenges, I say every challenge is an opportunity in itself. So we just need to go and take it head on. For women, they should stop taking themselves as someone who require a special treatment or a quota. And for men, it's high time that they stop taking women as the ones who need some sort of special treatment. Put extra effort on them, make them leadership ready. But then when you come to picking them up, please go as per their competencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fatma. Some interesting points raised. I'd like to actually shift the conversation a little bit. You know, we're talking very local, and of course we need these kinds of local realities to be addressed. You know, as we know, Pakistan remains a pretty male-dominant, country. So I'd like to move to Ayla Majid, who is the founder and CEO of Planative. She is a leading financial and business advisor assisting public and private sector entities in project structuring, raising capital, privatization. She has a decade-long experience of governance and leadership across many different industries, including energy. She is a member of Global Future Council on Energy, working on the energy transition towards sustainable, affordable, and reliable energy for the larger global population. So I'd kindly like to kind of switch it a bit, like some local perspective, but with global action. So what steps do you think Pakistan's renewable energy sector needs to take locally to catch up to the global gender matrix that have been set?
Barbara, thank you for the question. It's my pleasure to be here as a panelist in PFAN session. So interesting comments made by all the other speakers, and that kind of also gets me to think as to how can we sort of bring in the frameworks that exist out there and all the good things that have happened globally in order to improve the gender gap, and also sort of look at that what are the issues really in Pakistan. So of course, it's very important to understand that what is the opportunity there. So IRENA mentioned in its report a year ago that by 2030, there'll be about more than 32 million jobs in the renewable energy sector. So we're talking about, from the current number, a gap of about 14 million or so. There's been considerable discussion as to what is the gender sort of population across the globe, half and half. So obviously we need to include more women in this, and not just in a particular subset of the energy sector, but all throughout the supply chain. So that is what the focus should be. Looking at, so I was reading a report on, I believe this was done by Women in Energy in Pakistan. So there was a mention that in Pakistan, or maybe I think it was probably an IRENA report, which said that again, a year ago, the jobs created or the jobs that existed in renewable energy was something like 69,000. But that's mainly because of the projects that are put in the hydropower sector, because these sectors, they require very large labor force. Looking at, say, the other organizations within the power sector, whether it is power producers, whether it is distribution companies, whether it's the transmission and dispatch company, the gender parity is absolutely awful there. It is the number of women is like very, very small. And when it comes to technical roles, and I'm glad to have one of the earlier speakers that she's working purely in a very technical area. So the technical roles, the numbers shrink even further. And I think this number perhaps comes from the Women in Energy's report, that in the technical roles, the number is about 2% across various utilities, etc. And then there is, of course, in the middle management or in the traditional areas of HR, finance, etc., you would see women there, but less in the technical role and less in the senior role. So the number for the senior roles is very, very low as well. It's about 2%. There was a mention just now that Pakistan needs to, in terms of meeting its NDC by 2030. So of course, what do we do with that number? So all that investment that needs to come in there, it's an opportunity. We need to create women ready to work in various roles all throughout the sort of the supply chain and sort of various projects that need to be implemented, etc. I would also like to refer to World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report 2022, and with a focus on the energy sector. So 1 in 5 leadership roles is held by women. So there again, the number is very, very small. And when it comes to the gender pay gap in the energy sector, women are paid 19% less. So clearly there's a problem. And one of the issues which is very pertinent to Pakistan as well, because typically women go in say traditional sectors, and I'm a great advocate of promoting women and asking women to challenge themselves to go in all the non-traditional areas. And obviously, there needs to be career progression, advancement pathways to be created for them. So that is definitely going to help. When it comes to innovation and innovation, particularly in the energy sector, again, the numbers are pretty low for founders going and finding energy companies or energy innovation startups. So globally, the women-led startups are about 20%, but when it comes to women energy startups, it's about 11%. Moving on to, again, linking this to the emerging markets and developing economies investments required in renewable energy sector. So the number is about 1.35 trillion each year. Again, that's a very clear indicator that the opportunity is there. Now we need to have readiness. Before moving on to the solutions, I'll just mention a final point on access to capital. There was a mention earlier that access to capital remains a challenge. Globally, again, under the GFANs or under lots of initiatives, the capital is committed. But there, from the gender perspective, a challenge remains that how many women are in the wealth management space? So there are various kind of numbers. There's actually a range which says about perhaps 8 to 12% of the wealth management or the funds are led by women. So if we have more of women wealth managers, women fund managers, and with funds focus. With a funds having gender lens, that will certainly help in this particular area. Obviously, we need funds in the energy sector, but from the gender lenses, of course, very, very important. Coming to the solutions, which are very pertinent for Pakistan and like for any other country as well. So yes, we need to bring in funding, certainly. With funding, we also need to enhance work on training and capacity building, and that too in STEM and other technical areas. Career paths to be chalked out clearly. There are lots of policies in the private sector, some good policies, in fact, quite a lot of good policies in the public sector as well. They are instituted, but we need to do more in order to sort of address these gaps and give ourselves targets at the country level, at institution level, at whether it's across different sectors, whether it is the textile sector, energy sector, the banking and the finance sector itself. And finally, I would say is that we need to have the perspective of assessing the whole supply chain. So when it comes to the whole supply chain doesn't only come with when the energy or the renewable energy project is to be set up. Supply chain starts from the minerals, supply chain starts from the design, supply chain starts from the finance, etc. So all throughout these supply chains, we need to have a holistic assessment. And there are, of course, lots of assessments done, but we need to sort of bring it all together and see that where really are the gaps. And while doing so, having the gender lens. Mm-hmm. So there are, of course, lots of opportunities. The good thing is that the roadmap is fairly clear. And something that we at the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Energy Transition and the work that I do at Planetive as well, that's what our mission is, what our focus is, that we bring in climate, technology, and financial solutions with gender lens all together. So we really should be focusing on that. So.
Thank you, Ayla,
Thank you
for
so much.
those really insightful comments and sharing some research as well. That was really helpful. And actually, this makes a pretty good segue into our next topic, which is actually looking more at what the development sector is doing. So I'd like to invite Tahira Rahman Gunjial, who is a national gender specialist at the Asian Development Bank. She has 21 years of experience serving in Women Development Department of Literacy and with the World Bank and Asian Development Bank. Her specialty is within gender mainstreaming on the technical, strategic, and guidance part of gender mainstreaming in Pakistan. So hello, Tahira. I'd just like to ask you, so what role do development projects play in mainstreaming gender within Pakistan and the clean energy transition? On the policy level, but also on a practical on-ground level, like for instance, some of the projects ADB has been working on. Could you kindly share with us your experience in this realm?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pipan. And I'm very happy that I'm here. I got a chance because today I have a very tough schedule, but the topic is very close to my heart, and I'm very much interested in clean energy, green economy, and related in renewable energy involvements. Here to elaborate the role of development project in gender mainstreaming within the clean energy transition, especially concerning to policy level development and on ground initiative. Honestly speaking, I have a vast working experience for almost 23 years working with World Bank, ADB, and government of Pakistan and provincial governments. So today I feel, if you don't mind, I want to speak by my heart. Today here I feel representation missing, especially the representation of the project team leads who have implemented several projects in Central West Asians and especially Pakistan. Well, I was reviewing the data, especially related to the clean energy project. I found that most of the project that have really mainstream gender into their project implementation, most of the project has been funded by the Asian Development Bank. And this is very happy for me that I can share with you the realities and especially the process while we were involved in the policy development and the project preparation and especially the project implementation. Most inspiring thing is that ADB has a very, I guess, a bold gender policy, gender and development policy, and each and every sector has a special guideline toolkits that need to be followed while they prepare any kind of a feasibility for designing a project. So this is same for the energy sector. And I want to just briefly elaborate the challenges we noticed during the feasibility stage that women are facing, especially concerning to energy sector. Women are mostly found in visible energy sector. We don't see as more women as a consumer, more women as a supplier, or even as a decision maker, in contrast to their substantial role as a household energy manager and agriculture producers, because they are coping with environmental degradation and climate change impacts, or especially for the energy sector to be sustainable and inclusive, women and men need to be equal partner in developing new ideas and strategies. Most of the while we see that energy sector sources for lighting, heating, cooking, transport, economic production inhibits productivity for men and women. And our men and women differently experience, or mostly women faces energy poverty, because the gender relation of the given society are not more feasible for women, especially when I see my colleagues work or the working in Asia and the Pacific, particularly in our rural areas. Our women, especially in our household level, are socially designed as a primary role to cope with energy poverty and to complement lack of access to affordable energy sources. Women time and labor have been used to provide energy for food production, cooking, heating, and water. Yet women, both as a consumer and suppliers, remain invisible and in energy sector. ADB as a fully aligned ADB gender operation policy and the gender and development policy fully aligned with the 2030 agenda, sustainable development goal 5 and 7. And I will share with you the most of the key strategy that ADB is implementing, promoting gender equity, especially for increasing the efficiency of energy usage and supply side. Most of the project that yield providing services so yield lower cost, increase availability of energy, and especially for environmental economic benefits, they are easing the pressure on fossil fuels and reducing the demand for such fossil fuel resources and improving
So,
energy security, reducing
Ma'am
greenhouse gas.
Tahira, unfortunately, we are, a bit short on time, and I know, ADB has done so much work in this capacity, and please do share with us, some documentation about this, and we'd love to maybe make some kind of, share with the participants after the event as well.
Sure,
But
sure,
thank,
sure, sure,
but
sure.
thank you so
Just
much for your
recent.
time,
No,
especially
give
your
me
busy
2 minutes.
schedule.
Sorry, give me 2 minutes. Although
Sure,
I
sure.
was, yeah. Just I want to share the recent access to clean energy fund has been established by ADB, and in June 2023, it is being conducted at Manila, and this would be a venue for clean energy practitioner that they come together and share insights to how to take action using clean energy. Um, um, but about the but we don't have any much time, so I will share with you some good practices and as case studies and success stories that ADB has implemented certain development project clean energy in Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan. Thank you so much.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much. It's cross-pollination and learning is so important, and I will definitely follow up with you for that. I'd just like to move on to our next session, which is a bit, I think a newer way of doing things, which is in the e-mobility sector. We have Dr. Kiran Siraj with us to comment. She is an experienced postdoctoral researcher with a demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry. And her research and development is also focusing on EVs in Pakistan. And she is an electrical engineer. Dr. Kiran, could you comment on how technologies such as EVs can be inculcated within urban mobility to be more sustainable and inclusive to women?
Thank you so much, Mavra, for inviting me here. Thank you so much. The question you asked is very important and it's very dear to me because as a woman, I am kind of, facing challenges in my e-mobility practices. So as an electrical engineer and a postdoc in sustainability and climate change, I know the importance of emission-free transport. The sector is one of the largest contributor to GHG emissions in Pakistan, and within this sector, just the road transports account for 85% of the emissions. I'm talking about cars, buses, etc. So incorporating EVs into urban mobility is essential for creating a sustainable and inclusive transportation system. We already know the advantages of EVs, that they have the potential to reduce carbon emissions and air pollutions, which are significant contributors to climate change and negative impacts on human health. Additionally, EVs can help reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, and also by doing this, they are creating new opportunities for job as well. So economic developments in the EV industries and all that. So making EVs more accessible and inclusive for women is particularly important because women often face unique challenges and safety concerns when it comes to transportation, especially in developing countries like Pakistan. By promoting EV adoptions and creating a supportive infrastructures, keeping the need of especially the Pakistani women, we can create a more equitable and sustainable transportation systems that can benefit everyone, not just women, regardless of the gender, income, or location. So therefore, it is vital to prioritize the adoption of EVs in urban mobility and make them accessible and inclusive for all, including the women in Pakistan especially. Now, most of us have already talked about the challenges and the problems that we as women face. I'm going to talk more about the solutions that maybe government of Pakistan and the private sectors can, provide. So there are many steps, but I know due to the limitation of time, I'm going to just, highlight the most important ones. The biggest challenges that I personally feel is creating awareness among Pakistani women. Women in Pakistan, they are not aware of the benefits of EVs. The few percentage that is even aware, they fear from the unknown, or they have security concerns, etc. So what I feel is the awareness campaigns should be initiated to educate them, on the benefits of EVs that are more relatable to them. They don't care about, the climate change and air pollution. We have to trick them. We have to make the solution more relatable to them. So then they will hear, right? So the communication, I think, and the awareness campaigns are the key, first of all, for a Pakistani woman. Having said that, the second step would be engaging with communities and involvement of community members in planning and implementation of the transportation solutions. By doing that, the government can better understand and create more effective and sustainable solutions that meet the need of Pakistani women and of also the other marginalized groups as well, but especially for that particular community. Um, Now, due to the lack of time, I just want to tell something about the technological advancement that the government of Pakistan can initiate. First of all, we all know that the robust and properly placed charging infrastructure is the biggest barrier in EV adoption in Pakistan. Therefore, the government of Pakistan and also the private sector should work together to establish a robust charging station that is accessible and affordable, especially in the area where women travel frequently. The women-friendly areas and like that. The second thing that is most important is the safety concern. So safety is a critical concern for women in Pakistan. Therefore, the government and private sector should work together to ensure that EVs, especially the two-wheelers, are designed with safety features. They should be designed with safety features that are tailored to the Pakistani women needs. So by doing this, they will be making the two-wheelers, especially the two-wheelers, I'm saying, more safer for a woman to adopt. Secondly, government of Pakistan should work to improve safety by investing in well-lit and well-monitored transit stops, providing security cameras, providing security officers, installing safety features such as emergency alarms, or maybe developing some safety apps or things like that. So there are many other things that financially a government of Pakistan can do, or the training programs that they can offer to encourage more women to enter the EV industries, not just to teach a woman how to drive, but to repair, to maintain EV, and as well as how to operate the charging infrastructure. These are the things that are actually more important than driving, right? They should know how to repair and maintain it. One
Yeah,
last comment.
those are really good points, Dr. Kiran, and I completely agree that security features as well as having that kind of charging infrastructure so no one is stranded on the road is very important. Sorry, thank you so much for those insights. Sorry, we do have to move on a little bit, but thank you, Dr. Kiran, and would love to connect with you again.
Mavra, if just one thing you can just let me finish, that is, I think,
Sure.
as equally as important to EV is that just the last one second I'll take. Government of Pakistan should push the urban mobility towards sustainability by making the cities more friendly to active transport, that is walking, cycling, and other forms of active transport system. This is very important. Not just EVs, the government can invest in infrastructure such as bike lanes, pedestrian walkways, bike sharing programs, and things like that. Because I know that EV is an important pillar of sustainability towards when we talk about urban mobility, but making a city walkable and friendly to active transportation system is equally as important as adopting the EV technology. Thank you so much. Now I'll finish.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Kiran. That is such an important point because, public access to public spaces like streets, like roads is so important for women's equality as well. Thank you so much. So moving on to something that's very specific to the PPSE project as well, is discussing equity in financing for greening the clean energy transition. So I'd like to move forward to Ma'am Aisha Aziz, who's the founding managing director at Pak Brunei Investment Company. She has 28 years of experience in financial sector for project and structured finance, debt markets, and private equity. She has strong relationships with market participants and facilitators and a demonstrated understanding of regulations and market dynamics. So Ma'am Aisha, I'd like to ask you, since you've been part of PBIC since its inception, how do you think the investment sector has evolved for women, particularly in the clean energy space, the renewable space?
Thank you very much. This is a very interesting platform, and I've been listening to a very diverse set of opinions. I'll start by actually claiming that the female of the species has a much smaller carbon footprint than her male counterparts. And I think that's more a function of lack of opportunity rather than conscious choice. But this also means that as more women join the community of investors and entrepreneurs in Pakistan, we have a chance to start with a clean slate through more conscious alignment of their business objectives with sustainability goals. And of course, clean energy is very much an integral part of those goals. In my own sphere of influence through the investment bank that you mentioned, we're also evolving in this direction, and we've taken this clear view that we will go for sustainable lending and investment activity. So while we've invested and participated in the usual, larger renewable energy syndicates, most notably in the Jhimpir Wind Corridor, our business model is actually based on working with small to medium-sized corporate entities, and on projects that are actually not large enough or interesting enough for commercial banks. So it is this segment where we've actually worked on a lot of green projects, and these include, if I were to name a few, 4 megawatts of energy from rice husk to feed a very small steel melting plant, which would otherwise have gone out of business. We've done 12 megawatts of energy from burning bagasse, 2 megawatt from burning cornucopis, which was the first time cornucopis was used, and a 6 megawatt run of the river project, which is, I think it'll be the first private power producer in the small hydel category. And it will, once it has the wheeling license, it will carry clean energy from Kashmir to Peshawar. So while banks have financed a lot of solar panels for large corporates, and we spoke to a few of the larger textile units here, we have diverted these subsidized schemes because State Bank had very attractive subsidies that were given for smaller clean energy projects. We've diverted this to the rooftops of a lot of small industries, because those are the ones that are they're the most vulnerable to energy costs and to supply issues. And it is this sector really, the small and medium-sized corporate, that has very limited access to financial services. It's not just the SMEs, it's also the small corporates which lack this. And of course, it's not just capital, it's also professional know-how and governance standards that are low. So our experience of working with these smaller corporate entities has shown us that their focus on day-to-day rather than long-term strategy is a major impediment to their growth. These customers often divert their working capital into fixed assets. And it's actually at the greatest risk of failure, because we all know that there's a slow but very sure movement towards a low carbon future. We spoke to, I think we had Mavish from the textile sector. So the example that comes to my mind in the textile sector is that this is the bulk of our exports. And while the big players are all geared up to meet stringent requirements of their buyers under the increasing pressure to comply with sustainability measures, the smaller textile units are very ill-equipped, and without serious investment in new technology, in processes, in raw material supply chains, these businesses can't survive. And I think because we have worked in this segment, we're actually now increasing the scope of the services that we provide. We've just established this month a carbon advisory unit. And the mandate there is to advise companies and projects that meet our own viability benchmarks, so that, we know that they have a viable business plan towards both an optimal capital structure, and we also push for good governance, and sustainability goals are very much part of such governance standards. Our transactions have varied in size from just 25 million rupees to as much as 700 million rupees. And this is the exposure that we have taken ourselves. And this is actually wide enough to cover several types of deals, and it's obviously sector agnostic.
So
We also finance. Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to hop on because like I think what you're speaking of gives me a really good
So-
kind of loop into our next
I'll
speaker
I'll
and
just
topic.
speak of our SME customers. I just want to say one thing, that we have a growing footprint in the SME market, and we have very special financing schemes for women. These are at very subsidized rates. So while the interest rates are 25% for corporates, these people can borrow at 5%. And the majority is traditional women-dominated businesses. We've got beauty salons, jewelry makers, home kitchens for food delivery, but we also have now cattle farmers and small shopkeepers, and they've actually graduated from small to from the micro to the small category. There's not a single defaulter in this category. We have about 2 billion, and these are small borrowers, no default. And the first priority for these women is actually to pay off their debt rather than grow the business. And really, this is the mindset, this credit portfolio, which we feel represents a more responsible class of entrepreneurs. And, we feel that they are the ones who will probably be more environment friendly as well as they grow in size and scope. Just one last thing, somebody mentioned equity. The company that I head, we have 75% of our board is women. Our CFO, our company secretary, and now our external auditor is also a woman. It was not deliberate, it just happened. And just a last thing, that our infection ratios are actually the lowest. I think they're the lowest, second lowest amongst all banks and DFIs. So that comment somebody made on risk and women in risk management, I think that's actually quite true. I'll end here. I know we're short of time, but thank you.
Thank you, Aisha, for those insights, and congratulations. That's really heartening and encouraging to hear. Thank you so much. So I'd like to kind of zero in on what Aisha was also saying and ask Maheen Rahman, CEO of InfraZamin, which is a private infrastructure development group. And Maheen also graduated from the Warwick Business School. Going on what ma'am was saying, could you, from your experience, also share some insights into the biggest challenges women face in new emerging sectors like EV, like fintech, like climate finance, but how can we convert these challenges into opportunity?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here on this platform. It's been very enlightening to listen to everyone's views. I think I'm going to turn your question around and say that I think we've heard a lot about the challenges that women face, and I'd like to talk more about the opportunities. Because at the end of the day, we can go on about how we sit at the bottom of the gender equity index, how opportunities are slim. But the reality is, when we are at this level, where we are ranked almost second last and just ahead of Afghanistan on gender equity, there's only one way to go, and that's hopefully up, right? So let's talk a little bit about what the opportunities could be, particularly with regards to clean energy and sort of the new technologies that we've heard talked about, EVs, solar, wind, etc. So these are all very new and upcoming fields, particularly in Pakistan. The technology is still being fully developed. It's not a mature industry by any standards. And Pakistan's overall amount of, say, generation in this area is, I would say, less than 2 or 3%, right? So with the commitment that Pakistan has made to transition towards 30% in terms of renewable energy, clearly we're sitting at the bottom, and hopefully we see a ramp up over the next few years. Now, I think this is an interesting time because while there are certainly challenges for women in every space, I think when it comes to new technology, and in particular, when we look at IT services, we look at fintech, we look at the digital space, these areas are incredible equalizers for women in terms of developing business models and developing entrepreneurship patterns and developing business plans to go forward, and also in raising capital. And I think that they stand very similar in terms of being able to access capital as do their male counterparts in many occasions. Yes, you do have fewer female entrepreneurs, but at the same time, that opportunity certainly exists to grow in that space. Now, when it comes to energy and business, so what are we at InfraZamin looking at? Now, we are here to support infrastructure projects in the private sector. And we do that with many multiple sort of development impact lenses, but very high on that list of development points that we want to look at is gender. And how the companies that we are supporting in terms of raising infrastructure financing are meeting basic gender requirements. And it's not just about having more women in the workforce, it's about how they're looked after and how they are safe in those spaces and whether or not they have equal opportunity to rise in those spaces. So what have we been doing? So I think the last transaction that we supported was actually in digital infrastructure, and we did add on significant layers of both governance as well as gender into that transaction. In particular, baseline that at least 20% women need to be hired in that company as part of that expansion, which is now underway. And this digital infrastructure expansion will, by the way, cover 14,000 kilometers of fiber optic across Pakistan and affect nearly every city that we have here. The second point that we included in that transaction was the availability of internet access to women and women-led businesses, and particularly in the small and medium enterprise, right? So with that in mind, that gives you a framework in terms of how we like to work in terms of actually investing in companies which have that gender lens focus. Now, when it comes to energy, in particular, clean energy, I think with businesses today, the ones that will be successful are those that can transition away from fossil fuels towards clean energy here, particularly localized sources of energy here, and work towards the export market. So I think if you have to look at a winning combination for business in Pakistan, it would be localizing the energy supply chain. We spend $20-odd billion in terms of fuel import. And the World Bank estimates that if we even use about 0.7% of our land mass for solar and wind, etc., we could possibly cover at least $5 billion of that through renewable sources. So clearly the economics make sense in terms of that. I think what we'd like to see in this space is, and I think someone mentioned access to finance, and that's specifically what we're here for. So we are looking at approximately in our pipeline, almost 60 megawatts of clean energy. And we have also been working with PFAN in terms of their project development in this area. What we are not seeing, and this is an opportunity, I think, for both the women in the industry as well otherwise, is intelligent tariffs. Because given the sort of interest rate environment we're sitting in, it is difficult to be commercial on solar projects right now. But where we are seeing intelligent tariffs come through, particularly dollar indexation of tariffs, those projects are much more likely to gather financing both from us as well as from the banking or the capital markets sector. So it's important to see how these things are structured in the clean energy domain. And then finally, I think the real sort of challenge that you mentioned before on women, and I think it's been highlighted here as well. But I think it's also very much the responsibility of women to move into these fields quickly because they are still very much wide open, whether it is in EV financing or whether it is in solar panels or wind, etc. While the technical skill is sometimes a challenge to find, that can be developed within every layer of every organization. There needs to be clear gender frameworks developed in terms of what is the plan, what is the target. But ultimately, I think this is a space that's very wide open for women to participate in because there are no standout leaders. There's no one here that's really made, you can go around and say you have a huge market share here. So in reality, this is a space that's open for participation of women. And at the same time, given the kind of graduates we are seeing in our universities, there is almost 40% in the technical fields at this point in time. So the question really is encouraging them to be part of these industries early on, and then using making sure that those organizations where they enter develop the right career paths for those women to go forward. So I think in a nutshell, just summarize here that I think while there always are challenges in Pakistan with regards to gender, there are spaces that are opening up. And I find clean energy, technology, and all these new areas coming in to be very good for early stage organizations that are looking to expand here. And within that, I think women can play a hugely significant role. And a lot of that will be on their ability to grab that opportunity as well. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Very well said, Maheen. Thank you. That's very encouraging to hear as well. So lots of good notes on that. I'd like to move on to Ifat Mankani, who is the CEO of JS Investments. She is a capital markets professional with eminent experience in investment strategy formulation, risk management, and securities valuations. Welcome, Ifat. You are leading one of the most prominent asset management companies in Pakistan. And JS Investments has been instrumental in financing clean energy ventures and is working to launch a fund under the same theme. Can you please shed some light on the opportunities available for women entrepreneurs?
Thank you, Mahendra, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Innovation is the key driver for not only for the economic growth of the country. We also believe it's very crucial to understand it using a gendered lens. That is, while investing for financial returns, we intend to create thematic funds, particularly in the alternate space, that would also consider the benefits to women, both through improving economic opportunities and through securing the social well-being of women. There's no denying, of course, as we have all heard in this session, that improving opportunities for women and women empowerment would yield greater returns to sustainable development. So for any investment professional like myself, it's very important to consider the sustainable development of any portfolio company. We as a group have been overall very involved in supporting the group growth of SMEs with women entrepreneurs. We worked on a lot of, our banking arm has worked on the credit financing for women entrepreneurs and as well as capacity building. At JS Investments, we recognize that the recent national catastrophes have impacted quite a lot of countries, and Pakistan has been affected as one of the ones which are ranked higher on that aspect. So because of this, we are in the concept designing stage for a VC fund that would consider equity in financing for the energy transition and help promote diversity and inclusion in the clean energy space in Pakistan. The broader theme is likely to be investing in technologies that help reduce carbon emissions and promote the use of clean energy, such as solar, wind, hydro, and other forms of renewable energy. We understand that mitigation activities which aim to decrease greenhouse gas emissions, including through support for technology development and capacity building, provide important opportunities to improve livelihoods whilst creating new possibilities for participation and empowerment, particularly in the renewable energy sector. So this fund will give special consideration. So once we are developing the theme, the broad theme and the principles layered, this fund will actually be giving special consideration to women entrepreneurs who are working in this space. And promote, we'll also be promoting diversity in by considering equity financing. The fund can actually ensure that that women have the women and entrepreneurs and underrepresented groups have equal access to funding and can contribute to building a more diverse and inclusive business community in Pakistan. So prior to this launching stage, we're trying to engage with organizations that support women entrepreneurs, such as incubators, accelerators, and industry associations. We understand that has a great impact on in the future performance of those portfolio companies. So these organizations would help us in identifying such startups. Secondly, the fund will also see out to opportunities that will align with its mandate to finance clean energy ventures, and also aim to monitor and report our progress towards achieving diversity and inclusion goals. So we want to build on more KPIs and parameters around it. So regular reporting on the number of investments in women-led or women-owned businesses and the number of diverse employees within those companies. Overall, by taking these steps, we believe that we, as an asset manager, we would be playing a very crucial role in financing the transition carbon economy in Pakistan, but also towards the economic development. We also intend to develop, to support the research and development focus on developing innovative clean energy technologies that can help accelerate the energy transition. So these are a few opportunities that the fund is aiming to cater to.
That's so wonderful to hear, and we really look forward to following up with this. And is there a launch date in mind?
So this is based on our longer, you would say, the longer transition in the alternate space. So it is one of the funds.
We'll keep in touch for sure, Ifat, and we will definitely share with our network when this is launched as well. And please do keep us on the loop. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now I'd like to get to the last speaker in this particular session about climate finance. Bina Bilgrami is the head of green banking at GS Bank, and she's also the recipient of the prestigious Bank of England Fellowship. So over to you, Bina, and given your background of corporate and investment banking and the recent foray into green banking, how can you access, how can we have more access to financing be made easier for women entrepreneurs? And is there any importance or being put on in the inclusion of women in green banking departments particularly?
Mavra, thank you for the introduction and for PFAN for having me here. I'm delighted to be one of the panelists. Now, as per the latest figures, Pakistan has only 1% of female entrepreneurs compared to the 21% of male entrepreneurs. Now, having said that, being an entrepreneur isn't an easy job, and being a female entrepreneur is definitely not easy. Now, business owners have to overcome many, many obstacles to become successful, and these challenges are even more so for women. So one of the main obstacles faced by businesswomen is the access to financing when they're trying to set up a new business or expanding an existing one. So they may have a very good idea, they may have an amazing business plan, but if they don't have any funds to execute those ideas and business plan, then they cannot go ahead. So at GS Bank, we are committed to increase the representation of women and at all levels across the board, alongside establishing equitable practices for our employees. Now, under the State Bank of Pakistan refinance scheme, we have partnered with them, and there is the business loan program, which is called the Khud Mukhtar business loan program, which is especially geared towards the female-owned businesses. So the basic idea behind this project is to empower women entrepreneurs to become financially independent, and this facility has been designed keeping their financial needs in mind. So the financing is provided for all the women who are trying to set up a new business, or they're trying to expand an existing one where they have been in that business for at least 1 year and have sufficient knowledge to run that business. So the product features of this business loan are quite simple. They can avail financing from 100,000 to 5 million, and there's a subsidized rate of 5% markup. The facility can be availed from 1 year to 5 years, and there's no processing fee and there's no hidden charges, while they are trying to avail this facility. The eligibility criteria for this financing is also very, very simple. I mean, all they need is an ID card, a computerized one. They have to be under the age of 60 years, and they also have to have a clean ECIB record, meaning they should not have any default or overdues in their name. So since the inception of this Khud Mukhtar scheme, GS Bank has been successful in disbursement of over 100 million rupees of loans to almost more than 110 female customers. So Speaking of financing available to women, I would like to highlight that GS Bank is the only commercial bank in Pakistan which has been accredited by the Green Climate Fund. Now, GCF is funded by developed countries to make a significant shift towards low emission and climate resilient development, especially in developing countries. And this is to help achieve the goal of keeping a global temperature rise under 2 degrees Celsius. So our partnership with GCF has enabled us to pursue various kinds of projects of up to $250 million US. So the first project of GCF, the first project with GCF is called the Pakistan Distributed Solar Project, and it is the first private sector project aimed to combat issues pertaining to climate change by providing a risk protection to JS Bank to promote financing of renewable energy solutions. One of the key characteristics of this project is the Gender Action Plan for promoting women inclusion and to narrow down gender disparity in employment within the solar energy space. So JS Bank will expand its existing women-oriented product programs for solar lending to promote renewable energy solutions, and will also provide further concessional financing for female end borrowers. We are also offering especially designed products for our female customers. We have a product called JS Her Saving and Current Accounts. Now, this is more liability side of banking, but these accounts are designed especially for women. With this account, they can enjoy a suite of banking facilities with preferential pricing, and they can also avail a free micro critical illness cover, which is going to cover illnesses like breast cancer or ovarian cancer. Now, you also asked me about how important is the inclusion of women in green banking departments. One question I get asked a lot is, what is green banking? And in simplest terms, green banking is basically eco-friendly financing. Having said that, women's participation in green banking is not only essential to sustainable development, but is also important in the integration of the three most important pillars of green banking, which are environmental, economic, and social. So it's been highlighted that companies with more gender diverse workforce and leadership, they do a much better role in risk management, innovation, and problem solving. These characteristics are extremely critical in combating the climate crisis. Now, many studies have been undertaken by Ivy League colleges, which are showing that female employees and leaders are more willing to act on climate change and more effective in doing so when they are given that opportunity. Fostering gender.
Sorry, you said very well said, ma'am. And I think thank you so much for highlighting, the social and ecological, tie in between the gender. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm so sorry, but we just have to move on. But thank you so much for those insights and telling us more about JS Investments initiatives. And we will be sharing with our speakers, the participants as well, these details. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Now I'd like to move on to our next topic, which is digital, leveraging the power of technology and networks, which also happens to be the theme of this month's Women History Month. So I'd like to hand over to Namira Hamid, who is the founder of Women in Energy. She's also working with a think tank in the UK, and she has 10 years of international experience working in climate and policy, focusing on UNFCCC processes, negotiations, and public engagement in climate. So over to you, Namira. I wanted to ask you, Women in Energy has been active for 5 years now, and congratulations for that. Could you highlight how technology has helped you bring women in energy from diverse fields across the country together, and what kind of value has this made in this sector?
Thank you so much. I'll try to keep my part very brief.
Thank you.
But you raise a very good question. We, as COVID happened, a lot of our business models around the world moved online, and we also did the same. And we noticed an immediate double or triple increase of female participation in events. So these were webinars and sort of online workshops that were the easy sort of low-hanging fruits. But that gave us the idea that sometimes we put a lot of the onus on women to work around the system that doesn't really, and I know some of the speakers sort of spoke about this earlier today as well, when the system in which all of us work is unfair, when the systemic challenges are unfair to one gender, then you cannot have the same system working for everyone. So for us, it made sense that a lot of the networking events happen after 9 to 5 office hours. A lot of the networking happens in these sort of all boys clubs of, taking breaks outside of the office spaces or going out for late dinners. Oh, it's an official dinner. A lot of the women would have to go back home, take care of the families, be present for their children. And a lot of these areas and spaces that are created for opportunities, for promotions, for sharing contacts, they are inaccessible to the female workforce. So a lot of the work that we do is also deconstructing our own biases about, oh, as women, we need to be doing more. We, need to only be present on our merit. Yes, everything has to be on merit, but when the system is unfair, then you need to change some of the policies that exist. I'll quickly talk about the 5 pillars that we work in. We, as Women in Energy in Pakistan, have now been in operation for 5 years. A lot of us work in the private sector and the government sector, and we all sort of came together to create this network because of the importance of it in Pakistan. We start with education because we see that even if there are 23% female students graduating from engineering universities, only 4.6% of the total technical staff of energy companies is female. So clearly there's a gap that the graduates are not joining the energy and the power sector. So we give career talks, and we talk about opportunities that these female graduates have so that they know sort of what is in store for them in the sort of the workspace. The second is recruitment. There's a lot of work that needs to take place in making sure that the job descriptions and JDs and the recruitment styles are accessible to both genders. So we partner up with our industry linkages and industry partners, private sector companies, to work on better hiring mechanisms. The third is then development of female participants. A lot of the times we see that female professionals with equal level of educational background and equal level of merit will still not be sent to technical sites because of safety hazards or the company basically being lazy, is our opinion. So a lot of the work then is done on sort of how do we make sure that females get the same skills and trainings that the male counterparts are getting. The fourth pillar is then retention of women. A lot of women would choose to have families, would choose to have children. How do we make sure that the company policies allow for a maternity leave, a paid maternity leave, a maternity cover, a flexible return to work? And all of this shouldn't be regarded as, oh, are you going on vacation? No, that's not vacation. That's taking care of children at home. It's a full-time job that would be paid £5,000 a month in the UK, as the new statistics show. That's a lot of money. So how do we make sure that we deconstruct these biases about working mothers in the professional sector? And the last pillar that we work on is policies and regulations. Overall, at a national level, at a provincial level, what are some of the governmental policies? What are some of the private sector policies that need to be changed in order to break these sort of systemic barriers that we have? So I'll end here. And that was a quick summary of the work that we do.
Thank you so much, Namira. And it's really impressive what you guys have accomplished in 5 years. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to move on to our closing keynote speech by Ma'am Nadia Aftab, who is the country representative of UNIDO Pakistan. She's a seasoned development professional with specialization in environmental management, having more than 15 years experience in strategic planning, program development, result-based management, technical advisory, and institutional capacity building. She has greatly contributed in identifying and developing new projects, programs in the areas of climate change adaptation and mitigation, including in the agro industry, cleaner production, green industry, resource and energy efficiency, CSR, and youth entrepreneurship. And most importantly for today's discussion, women empowerment and gender mainstreaming. Ma'am Nadia, if you would kindly grace us with your speech. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mavra. representatives of USAID, distinguished panelists, members of private and public sector, and my colleagues from UNIDO PPSC project. Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. As we are closing the equity month, only 2 days are left. I'm very pleased to be part of this webinar today. And I must acknowledge the gracious support we are getting from USAID for the PPSC project, which have been instrumental in conducting the activities which we are doing to promote the clean energy, and the advisory services PFAN is doing to promote in Pakistan. As I talk about United Nations Industrial Development Organization, we are the technical agency of United Nations, which is mandated to promote inclusive and sustainable industrial development in our member states. And how we do that, we have 3 core focused areas. Sustainable supply chain in leather industry, for example, agro-food. Then we have cluster development initiatives. We have climate action, both mitigation and adaptation. And in Pakistan, we are the other is clean tech program, which we run for good many years in Pakistan, and investment promotion. Everybody, the panelists talk about, women, and I just would like to share some thoughts that I would be very happy to see that whenever we are conducting programs for clean energy, a journal program, we will see same representation of women in those programs. And it is not going to be like 3 men and 1 woman. And in sometimes the panels are all men and no women at all. So we need to go beyond, beyond women-specific initiatives. And for that, we need to work very closely with our partners, development partners. We need to work very closely with the governments and private sector entities to provide that conducive environment where this kind of wish can become a reality. And it is not something which I am wishing for. It is the UN Secretary General's commitment of getting a gender parity by 2030, which is, I think, which can be, which is doable, because the population, if you see for Pakistan also, the 50% are women, which is 50% women. So you can then try to do whatever to unturn the stone and bring those people into the mainstream. I also would like to highlight here that our experience as UNIDO in clean energy sector, we initiated a program back in 2014-15, which was a global clean tech innovation program. And this was the first program which in UNIDO started implementing in Pakistan. And at that time, talking about clean energy was not as obvious as it is nowadays. In that program, we ran that program for good 4 years. We built the capacities of the startups in clean technology sector, including renewable energy, clean energy. Why I'm bringing that project as an example now, that because when we started that program, only less than 10% of the participants were women. And when we concluded after 4 years, the participation of the women in that program was more than 30%. So with good 4 years, extensive advocacy and campaigning of UNIDO team and UNIDO's managers, I think we have been able to achieve that the target of more than 30% representation from women. And I'm pleased that some of the women are also part of this panel today, which is very proud feeling as UNIDO. Then we also have another program which talked about sustainable energy initiatives in industries. which was targeting basically more towards the solar and how our industrial units can benefit from these clean technology. You know, Pakistan is not a contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions as such, but the need for transition from traditional fuels to clean energy is a requirement. If we set aside a climate change at a moment, we see that the 20% increase in current energy prices makes businesses undoable. So this transition is very much needed. And for UNIDO, we had worked on, as I said, that we provided solar energy solutions to industries. And one of the key achievements in that program was, with only grant of 0.06 million, we have been able to achieve co-financing of more than $20 million, dollars, which was which have been achievable because you know, the industry has realized that this is in their own benefit. And also there were certain instruments where we worked with the like B2B models, and there were certain companies which provided the investment, and then this objective was met. So in a nutshell, I just would like to say that you know, as women, we need to also trust ourselves that we have the capacities and we have the skills, and there are no professions which are male dominated. There are professions globally which other women are doing. So why not to pursue those professions in Pakistan? And clean energy is one of such profession, and not only in management positions, but also to see that how in the whole value chain of the clean energy transition, the women can play their role, and how the partners can provide that advocacy, campaigning, and instruments and support to make that realized. So this is all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Nadia, for those illuminating points and telling us more about UNIDO's great work. Thank you so much. Now, just to officially close our webinar today, I would like to hand it over to my colleague quickly, who is Ehsan Gilani. He is an investment expert at PPSE, and he's an accomplished banker with 18 years of diversified experience of corporate investment banking. And he is actually one of the key leads on this task force, as it's working with lots of financial institutions. So thank you everyone for your time today, and over to you, Ehsan.
Thank you very much. It is. Thank you very much, Maura. Indeed, a pleasure to be part of this very interesting webinar. And as an advocate of women's participation in all sectors, I feel very proud to be here and see so many accomplished women leading in their own sectors. Some of them been leading in the sector for more than 2 to 3 decades, which is very heartening. We have come a long way in the last 2 to 3 decades. The way society and business have evolved, and women representation has grown. Although we are far behind from the achieved target, but the roadmap is there. And thanks to our donors and our partners, obvious aid, the State Bank of Pakistan, and other stakeholders we work with, have provided a very good pathway for women to lead and have that progression road where they can start from one step in entering the corporate world and lead to the CEOs or the leaders of the sector. I also feel very proud that today's panelists, most of them have carved their way up leadership position with their due competence, and have shown a very soft driving of this country, because we have to understand that Pakistan, while facing a lot of other issues, also have a very big stigma of being a male-dominated society. So this webinar has given a new face to that stigma, a positive one. And I believe that with patronage of all our panelists and the sectors we work with, along with our own program, we would lead this way to achieve that one target which we aspire to achieve in bringing our women to leading roles in all sectors. Unfortunately, we could not have our one of the our senior representative of the regulatory body. She had to be rushed to another meeting. Otherwise, I think that this webinar has attracted all the sectors, the bankers, the development sector, the DFIs, the women in energy, the experts, and they've come together to show us a new pattern of how the gender equality has evolved and is progressing towards equality in this 21st or 22nd century. Just to close this, that I feel very proud to say that PFN is also supporting some projects which are led and developed by ladies, women entrepreneurs, and we plan to do more and more in playing our role along with our partners. On that note, thank you very much for all the panelists, some of my ex-colleagues, some of my senior in the financial sector, and I look forward to working with you all and making this a success and embracing that aspiration of bringing our women at par with men in next decade or two. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Essen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Ji.